It all started one Easter when I was looking for Cabbage Patch Kids for my son, who was 1 year old at the time. I decided to go on eBay to see what was there and found this beautiful purple-haired Cabbage Patch Kid that somebody had totally redone. I really wanted her, but she went for way higher than I was willing to pay. She sold for over $100. So then I looked at the seller's sold listings. She had so many different Cabbage Patch Kids that she had rerooted the hair and made clothes for. I ended up becoming friends with her on Facebook, and she was very nice and told me how to reroot, and so it inspired me to start finding cheap TLC Cabbage Patch Kids on eBay. The problem was, when I did find these dolls, I wanted to keep them. It fascinated me how many different ones there were, and I found this collectors group online called Open Cabbage that had all kinds of information about Cabbage Patch Kids. I didn't even know they had foreign Cabbage Patch Kids. And if anybody knows me, they know that once I like something, I jump in with both feet and research everything I possibly can about the topic. I bought books and read everything I could, and I decided to start a blog to share information that I found. Diana's Patch. Anyway, I started rerooting the hair on these Cabbage Patch Kids that I found and making outfits and selling them. I loved it. It was so much fun to create these different dolls, and I had unique themes for them. I even bought fragrances to go with the themes so that my dolls would be different. I listed them on eBay and started the bid very low because I wanted to get people's attention and I wanted to see how high they would go for. Some of them were very disappointing and only went for $15, which, when you spend 2 or 3 days working on something and it only sells for $15, is very discouraging. But some of them sold for quite a bit. The one that sold the most was December Frost. She went for over $200. So even though I was doing something I loved to do and was making money, I decided to get a job outside the home. The reason I decided to get a job was because I was getting so much pressure from other people, basically saying that because I don't work outside the home, I have a ton of time on my hands, so they would volunteer me for things or guilt trip me until I felt like I had to do what they wanted. I got to the point where I felt like, fine, I'll just get a job outside the home and then they can stop asking me to do stuff for them instead of just saying no. I had kids to take care of, a house to clean, and a business to run, and yet they pushed me to get a job. I got a job at my favorite store, Joann's Fabric. Half my paycheck went to fabric. I loved working at Joann's. It was my happy place. But I kept buying so much fabric because I would see something and think, that would be perfect to make this out of. I had all these projects in mind, many for my business. I tried to keep up with my business and working at Joann's Fabric, but it was so difficult. And I was a hard worker. When I would go to work, I would put my best foot forward and do as much as I can and be a hard worker. That's just how I was. I didn't want to be caught doing nothing. I didn't want to be accused of being lazy or a slacker or not a good worker. Unfortunately, this caused me to get chronic tendonitis in both wrists and a torn ligament in my right wrist. It took 18 months for my ligament to heal. During that time, I couldn't do anything. It was hard to button my pants. It hurt to wash my face. I felt like an invalid. I ended up having to only be a cashier at Joann's because being at the cut counter was just too hard because of carrying the fabric and putting it away. It was just too much for my wrist. I wore braces, which helped, but I still couldn't do much. I couldn't even sign my name. Anyways, all of my rerooting and anything sewing related came to an end at that time. I was so discouraged and felt like I could never sew again. So I sold over $500 worth of fabric at a yard sale and started listing stuff on eBay. One day I was looking for a job for my husband on Indeed.com and found a merchandising position. It had flexible hours, so I thought it would be a better option for me than working at Joann's. I loved working at Joann's, but I didn't have flexible hours, and there was a lot going on in my life where I just really needed flexible hours. I ended up taking this job and working both jobs. My plan was to quit Joann's as soon as I got on this other job, but I loved working at Joann's so much that I didn't quit for a while. I knew in my heart that I needed to quit, but I kept working 2 jobs. One summer, my daughters who went to live with their dad in Alaska came to visit, and I didn't hardly see them at all because I would go from one job to the other. Then something happened in my life that was extremely stressful, and I had to quit. I just couldn't do 2 jobs anymore. So I quit Joann's, and things seemed to be doing really well with my other job, and I even had time to start sewing again. I still couldn't reroute because of my chronic tendinitis. I started making patterns to sell because making clothes would just take too much time, and they weren't selling for very much. When you spend several hours making an outfit and it only sells for $10, it's not really worth it. So I decided to start making patterns so other people could sew their own doll clothes. This seemed to be doing really well, a lot better than anything else, and it wasn't taking so much out of me. Plus, I love seeing what everybody makes from the patterns I sell. It brings me so much joy seeing the pictures on my Etsy feedback where they've made something from my patterns. A lot of the patterns that I have made were actually requested from customers. So I owe a lot of thanks to my customers. Without them, I wouldn't even be here on Etsy. A couple of years ago, I started noticing that I was really tired all the time. I didn't have any energy. I felt like I couldn't get enough oxygen. I felt like I wasn't getting enough sleep either. Every morning I'd wake up and feel like I didn't sleep at all. I ended up going to the doctor and got tested for anemia. My iron and blood count was low. The doctor ran a bunch more tests to see why my blood count was so low and didn't find anything. After spending $500 just in lab work, I decided not to go back to the doctor. I started taking iron, which helped, but I still felt like I was just never getting enough sleep. I started taking everything over the counter to find something that would work to help me sleep. Still, nothing helped. I was having a bunch of other symptoms too. A small voice inside me told me to check for lupus. I didn't even know what lupus was. I had heard about it, but I never knew what the symptoms were or what it was. So one day I decided to look up lupus symptoms, and I was shocked at how many symptoms of lupus matched mine. So I went to the doctor and told her flat out that I wanted to be checked for autoimmune diseases. I gave her my big long list of symptoms that I had printed out. She ran the blood work and it came back positive for Sjogren's disease, which is similar to lupus. When I looked at my lab results, I was actually positive in a lot of things, including lupus markers. My doctor didn't know anything about any of the numbers, so she recommended a rheumatologist for me to go to. I was getting to the point where I felt like I could either work or be a mom, but I couldn't do both. After getting home from work, I was so tired and exhausted that it was hard for me to do regular housework, let alone make patterns. I went several months without making patterns. I was going to work Monday morning, pumped and ready to go, but by Wednesday I'd be so sore and exhausted that it would take me the rest of the week just to recuperate, even though I still had to work 2 more days. So it made it impossible for me to put my best foot forward, and I started developing tendinitis in my back. Also, my tendinitis in my wrists was flaring up really bad. I was dropping things at work. I couldn't hardly pick anything up. Even a can of soup hurt to pick up. In my job, I did a lot of stocking and just couldn't do it anymore. So I asked my boss if I could take some time off, or even work less days. But because it was the holiday season, I wasn't allowed time off. So I decided to quit. My first full week of not working, I felt great. I feel like I have so much more energy and I can sleep in, and so I'm getting more sleep. And because I have social anxiety, then by not going to work, I don't have that anxiety. When you have social anxiety so much that you get used to it and don't even realize it's there, it's like having a knife stuck inside you, but just because you get used to it doesn't mean it's not causing harm. Don't get me wrong, I still have all the Sjogren symptoms, just not as bad. I was actually able to make 2 patterns and list them for sale in that first week that I didn't work. I feel like this is what I was always meant to do. I feel like I was never supposed to work outside the home, and if I would have just not listened to people and did what I wanted to do, I would probably have 100 patterns made and available to sell. Who knows, I might not even have tendinitis or autoimmune disease if I wouldn't have worked outside the home. I was recently asked to do something, and I said no this time. I told my counselor this, and she was very proud of me, said I should be very proud of myself. For someone who is a yes woman and can never say no to anything, saying no this time was liberating. I now have 26 patterns and counting. If there's anything that you get out of my story, I hope it's to follow your heart. Don't listen to what other people say. Do what you feel you should do. Listen to that small voice inside you.